I want to thank you all for coming out here this afternoon while we wait for Ted. I have a few remarks that I would like to make. First of all, Jessica's an amazing individual, and the Addiction Policy Forum is just a fantastic organization. And I completely agree with her that we need to bring all of these organizations together and give everyone a chance to reach people to help them find recovery. As a pastor, obviously, I lean toward the faith-based program. But I also understand this, that there is a physical component to addiction, that sometimes you need to move beyond just the faith-based program. My daughter has cerebral palsy. I prayed that God would heal her. He chose not to. She developed mental illness 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, mental illness called psychosis. I prayed that God would heal her. He chose not to. He chose to lead us to psychologists and psychiatrists in town who administered medication, and she is back to her happy-go-lucky, sarcastic, 24-year-old, know-it-all self. And so we do want to recognize that there are different avenues and there are different venues. I favor the venue of faith, but I believe that faith can cooperate with medicine. I also believe that faith can cooperate with counseling. And so I want to start really quickly. I told her I had very few remarks, so my church will probably laugh at this. This is going to be 3 hours here. You're in a church. This is not a political rally. I know some people are cranky about that, but we do not endorse any single candidate for the President of the United States of America. I still haven't made up my mind. I'm from New Hampshire. I'll make my mind up on Tuesday. Anyways, Luke chapter 4, you're in a church. Maybe you're not familiar with Luke. He wrote one of the gospel accounts of Jesus. And in Luke chapter 4, he wrote this. It's a quote of Isaiah. And Jesus is speaking. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed." My friends, there is nothing more pressing than addiction. There is nothing more oppressing than addiction. And so one of the things that really fires my heart, and when I spoke with Jessica, we talked about this, is putting a face to addiction. It's putting a face to the people that are in the shadows, and I appreciated the governor's remarks about that, removing the stigma. We seem to want to marginalize people that are different than we are, that struggle with different things than we do. And so throughout this process, I hope this afternoon we will humanize the addicted. You're going to hear from a dad today whose daughter died tragically from her addiction. Folks, these are family members. I have a 14-year-old daughter going to a school, which I almost told you where it was, but I'm not going to tell you where she goes to school. But she goes to public high school. Heroin is in public high schools. I was talking to Jessica. I said, as dads, what are we mostly worried about? We're mostly worried about our teenage girls getting pregnant from some rotten teenage boy. I agree with that. I think that's why we need more guns. And shovels. I'm just saying. And property. Shovels, guns, and property. Yes, ma'am?
Do you mind? I'm so sorry to interrupt. Would Jane Lazar join me? We just need to move your vehicle real briefly. It's an orange Volvo parked outside. Jane Lazar. Thank you, ma'am. So sorry to interrupt.
Where's Jane? Everybody watch Jane now. That's like the worst thing ever. Now she's got to get up and walk out in front of all you people. So let's get all eyes up front. Don't look at Jane. Look over here. Okay, all right. We worried about our teenage daughters getting pregnant, but the reality is we need to realize that there are some other very serious issues that our kids face today. And this issue of addiction is one of them. I drive my daughter to the bus stop, and we spend about 15 minutes together before school. And the other day I realized she's 14 years old, and I have not spent very much time warning her about drug addiction. I've heard it said that it only takes one hit of heroin to make an addict for life. It's that dangerous. It's that dangerous. And so we need a comprehensive approach. We need prevention, which Jessica's going to talk about, this awesome website that she's starting, this awesome foundation to help parents get tools in their hands to protect their kids. Beyond that, I want to warn us, again, not to marginalize the addicted, because here's the reality. We are all broken people. Everyone in this room, I hate to inform you, but we're all broken people. Everyone in humanity, and the Bible even says that we're all wounded. We all have some bend towards something, a perversion of something that God has given us that is good. I want you to think about it. How many of you could lose 20 pounds today? That's probably because you're addicted to food, that you're going to look down on this person that's addicted to heroin. Now listen, I like steak just as much as the next guy, but it's nowhere near as addicting as heroin, but I want to lose 20 pounds, and I haven't yet. But we look down on the person that perhaps when they were a kid took a shot of heroin, and we say, why can't you break that addiction? What's wrong with you? Well, what's wrong with you, chubby? What's wrong with you? You can't quit smoking yet. What's wrong with you, sex addict? What's wrong with you, person that's always in a relationship that harms you and others around you? We are all broken people. And this is why Jesus Christ came. We talk about sin. This fellow over here, he said, let's call sin, sin. I agree. Sin is sin. What I don't agree with and what I think people misunderstand is this, that when God calls something sin, it's not just about a moral failing. When God declares something as sin, it is because he loves his creation so very much that when they get involved in something that harms them, he calls that sin. You follow what I'm saying? God's moral law, if you will, is not there to kill our joy or to keep us away from enjoying things that are good. His rules are there to protect us from harming ourselves. And so maybe if we start to think of sin more than just breaking the rules, we start to think of sin as not doing things that harm ourselves and others, we might realize what this cross is all about. Jesus Christ is about compassion and a love for the person that is broken and wounded, and that's the heroin addict, and that's the person that's stuck in a bad relationship. And so that's why Christ came. He came to die for our sin and to pay the penalty, but not just that. He came to rise from the dead to give us hope. His death took away the penalty and the wrath of God, but his life gives us hope, so that when we in the faith community, when we pray to Jesus, we know that we're not praying to a dead God or an empty altar. We're praying to a God that hears our prayers and can come inhabit our lives. And so I want to encourage you not to dismiss the faith-based community, but faith-based community, I want to encourage you not to dismiss the medical community as well. Let's work together. Let's support each other. And so I want you to consider that. We're all broken people. We all have bends toward things that are harmful to ourselves. And these good things, they can be used well or they can be used poorly. And so our addiction problem, I look at it this way, it's threefold. It's a physical problem. When we fall into an addiction, and really an addiction of any kind, as I've studied it out, and the chemicals that are released in the brain, sometimes they're released by an addiction, sometimes they're released by a behavior, but they lock into ourselves a pattern that is incredibly difficult to break. So it's physical. I also look at addiction as emotional. It's an emotional addiction. It's an emotional problem that sometimes may require some deep and professional counseling. I'm a pastor. I do counseling. But I find it one of my greatest strengths is this, knowing when I don't know. So there are many times where I'll be in counseling with someone and I will say this, we need to stop. You've gone beyond my expertise. I need to bring you in connection with someone else that can take you to the next step. But it's also this, it's a spiritual problem. And we have a great spiritual problem in our nation today. It seems as though God is being pushed out into the corners and that we're trying to marginalize God and spiritual things. And my friends, whether you believe in Jesus, whether you believe in Allah, whomever you may believe in or not believe in, we are spiritual beings. And we need to nourish that spirit as well. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming out here today, and I hope that you will not leave this place unimpacted by the things that you hear. Again, it's not about voting for someone. This is not a political rally. This is a rallying cry to look at our daughters and to look at our sons and our brothers, our fathers and our mothers, and recognize that these people that are struggling have the very same value to their life as you do. And my Republican friends and my pro-life friends, those of you that are anti-abortion, listen, the life of that addict is just as valuable as the life of that unborn child. And we need to start taking that very seriously. Jessica.